Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Skull Session Recruiting Podcast brought to you by BuckeyeHuddle.com. I am Marc Givler. Got Kevin in with me here today. Kevin, it's official visit season. How are we feeling about the upcoming official visits?
Is it already official visit season? It is hard to believe in the whirlwind of the Ohio State calendar that we are now at the very end of May, getting into June, and official visits are up. I mean, hell, I'm still having a hard time really accepting that there are, call them spring, but is it really spring official visits? And then even on top of that, we were just got off Southern Swing. I still don't necessarily want to drive anywhere at this point. And we heard about all these other weekends, and nobody really, I mean, not nobody obviously, was talking about this upcoming, weekend that's considered the weekend of May 30th. But here we are with a big weekend on deck, and I know we will get to that here on the Skull Session Recruiting Podcast.
Yeah, BuckeyeHuddle.com, you guys, for the weekend coverage of the official visits. Jeremy Birmingham wrote a tremendous article on the front page of BuckeyeHuddle.com today with a huge rundown of all the visitors, where things stand, all his insight into that. You can get that at BuckeyeHuddle.com. We will dive into a few visitors. We're not going to do the whole thing. Again, if you go read Berm's article, if you want the entire rundown, we're going to talk about a few specific guys. They got a few five-star guys on campus this weekend. They're taking some big swings. These, a lot of people may think these guys are long shots. We're going to kind of dive into that. But first, I think this is the most relevant because of some things that have happened today. Savion Hyder, nation's number one ranked running back, will make his official visit this weekend. This comes on, and this visit's been scheduled for a while, but this comes on the heels now of Carson Baker, a four-star running back out of Georgia, who is scheduled to make an official visit to Ohio State in a couple weeks. That visit's now off. And so people are immediately trying to tie this to Hyder's visit this weekend. I think it can't possibly hurt, but I don't, how much do you think these two are related? I tend to think this maybe has more to do with Favor Aki, who, again, will be making his official visit to Ohio State here, I think, next week. Just what are your thoughts on this news and just what Ohio State's doing right now?
Recruiting is a giant jigsaw puzzle, and sometimes covering Ohio State recruiting can be doing the jigsaw puzzle upside down. So these are all sky pieces, so we know they go together. These are all field pieces, they all go together. No, we're just dealing with one blank sheet. But I kid. Ohio State, obviously a top recruiting power, one of the better classes out there, certainly one of the better classes that's not sitting at like 27 kids right now. Ohio State's coming off of a class that was pretty deep at wide receiver at running back with three running backs, and that includes Turbo Rogers, who, more of the Urban Meyer H. I mean, I don't really ever want to go through that whole spiel again, but what is the number this year? Is it 1? Is it 2? I'll tell you what it's not going to be. It's not going to be 3. And no, we're not hemmed in with 85. No, Ohio State's not going to go really to 105 each year in terms of where its scholarship number is going to be. It sounds like, from reports, 90 seems to be the fit. So we always have talked through the years, and Marc and I have been doing these shows either in written form or audio form or video form throughout all these years. Oh, well, if there's somebody that's just too good not to pass on, you're not going to pass on them. So why does Carson Baker fall off the board? We talked to him on Southern Swing. Everything seemed to be going swimmingly, but again, sometimes you sit there and you recruit in the Southeast, and it's not that the kid has changed, and it's not like his upbringing has changed. It's just that the situation has changed, and maybe he's hearing different things from different schools, and it kind of is what it is. So I think Favor Key is the constant. And is there a bias amongst recruiting fans because he's from down the street, one county over in Delaware? I mean, are people going to sell on him? I find that creep into my mind sometimes. Well, he's the damn local kid. Why the hell isn't he in yet at that point? So when you look at Savion Hyder, when you look at Derek Cooper, and you look at, it's a very small board at this point. I don't know necessarily how you tell Hyder or Cooper no and a key no, but somehow it appears, for all intents and purposes, they told Baker no.
Yeah, it feels like this has something to do with either the Hyder visit or the upcoming Favorite Key visit. I tend to think it has more to do with Favorite Key. That being said, Ohio State sources have been more optimistic on Hyder than I have been publicly. So it's interesting. I think Ohio State certainly feels it has a chance at Savion Hyder. My pick for Savion Hyder has been Tennessee. I think the depth chart, and certainly we can get the NIL can be whatever. You never quite know what to make of all that, but the depth chart at Tennessee, what they're selling there is pretty appealing. It's pretty close to home. So I think that's the team Ohio State's got to topple if they want to, this weekend, if they want to jump in and get that one. And then Derek Cooper, we talked to on Southern Swing, and that's going to bleed into the fall, maybe even into the winter. That's going to be a prolonged recruitment, and Ohio State seems very much willing to let that play out. I will go against the grain a little bit on Derek Cooper right now, though. I have seen a lot of national people in the recruiting industry leaning Miami on Derek Cooper. I don't think he's going to Miami. And I've been told by people I really trust on Derek Cooper, I really trust in South Florida, that it is unlikely that Derek Cooper stays in state. Now, that's all well and good until it gets down to the wire and there's some pressure to stay local and there's some pressure maybe financially with NIL and what one school's offering versus another school. But all of my information right now is that Georgia and Ohio State are probably in the top two. And that, in my opinion, right now, he's leaning to Georgia. And that Ohio State's got to beat out Georgia for Cooper, and they've got to beat out Tennessee for Hyder, which leaves, of course, Favorite Key, who I do still continue to think finds his way into this class. So this is going to be an interesting few weeks on running back recruiting, but that's where I have things right now. Another 5-star that this one we were able to sit down with or stand up with on Southern Swing, Felix Ojo making his long-anticipated official visit, 5-star, nation's #1 offensive lineman, according to some. Kevin, I guess how big – the official visits don't seem to come much bigger than this in terms of possibly like altering a recruitment. Like they've got to nail this one.
And there are going to be people out there that are going to say, this is going to make or break Ohio State's class. Let's tap the brakes there a little bit. I think it's going to be a good class, but it is a player of need at a position of need and just everything there. And we certainly have seen under Tyler Bowen an upswing in what offensive line recruiting is. And Rome wasn't built in a day. So sure, everybody can sit there and say, well, it's got to be done this year. I mean, look at what the depth chart is going to look like. It's never going to be any more wide open than it is. And there is some truth to that. There is some truth to it. And you are you're the shiny new penny out there. And yeah, they're going to be kids who you recruited at Virginia Tech now that you're recruiting at Ohio State. Ohio State coming off the national championship. Ohio State coming off of a tremendous, patch job. Granted, this was under Justin Fry rather than Bowen in terms of kicking Donovan Jackson outside and having to sit there and adjust to the loss of Seth McLaughlin and everything else. But, with Ojo, it's a big deal because a lot of even pre-visit stuff started to come out about it's Texas, it's Texas, it's Texas, it's Texas. And you almost are like, well, then why the hell are you even following this recruitment if you think that it's already done at this point? I mean, yeah, it's fun to be whisked around the country and have 4, 5, 8 official visits under the new rules and be able to have a steak dinner in each city and have, multi-millionaires several times over sit there and kiss your hiney and tell you how great you are and everything else. And, oh, your little sister, she's a real handful too. And, all this great talk, all these great platitudes and everything else. But when it comes down to it, I think it's Ohio State and Texas, with Texas having the proximity and Ohio State maybe having the juice right now. And, juice comes and goes. Proximity doesn't necessarily come and go. And that doesn't mean that I'm putting all my chips in Texas, but I think Texas is going to be tough to beat here. But I fully expect Ohio State to come out of this weekend as Ojo's unofficial leader. But that's just the afterglow coming out of a great visit. What does stuff look like in 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, etc.? Yeah,
that's going to be the thing is, there's really no doubt they'll put on a good official visit. Ohio State does a great job with these visits. Most schools do. It's kind of hard to mess these up. I mean, it does happen, but Ohio State historically has done very well on these things. I think Ojo really, really likes Ohio State. I think there's a lot that he likes about Ohio State. I think he likes the coaches. I think he likes the people. I think he sees a very intriguing early path to the field. But Texas is right there. I think, again, that's the school Ohio State's got the target. They've got to be laser focused on how they beat Texas. I think that's the major hurdle here. We were down there at the school. I threw this around to a few different people down there that I trust, and it was just like, hey, we think this is Ohio State and Texas, and they said we don't disagree. So there are certainly the train of thought is that Ohio State's maybe the one school that could upend Texas here. I'm not predicting that's going to happen at this point, but let's see how the weekend goes, and let's see where things stand after that. But I think right now it's Texas 1, Ohio State 2. I think everybody else is chasing those two programs right now for Felix Ojo. Then a really interesting one, Xavier Griffin out of Georgia, decommits he's a 5-star linebacker, maybe even like a stand-up edge guy. 5-star prospect from Gainesville, Georgia, same high school as Deshaun Watson. Decommits from USC, has a few officials set up, including one to Ohio State, of course, this weekend. Will announce at the end of June. This feels like a shot in the dark if you're Ohio State, but yet talking to some people here the last few weeks, even before the visit was announced, there seemed to be this feeling that like Ohio State was still pressing there, trying to get this to happen. He does decommit from USC, which is helpful. There's a relatively mixed group. I mean, Georgia's not on his list, but Florida State and Alabama are, and those schools are relative proximity to him. It's going to be interesting. I would strongly take the field here against Ohio State, but I think I would take the field against any one school. If you said, well, the field or Alabama, I'll take the field. The field or Texas, I'll take the field. But this is a wild one. I think just about anything could happen here.
I'm a little more bullish on Alabama on that one. I think that if you sat there and you said one school versus the field, I'd probably be 50% Alabama, 50% the field. Or maybe I should say 40. I don't know. It's somewhere around there. I think that Alabama is kind of the team. But it doesn't mean that you're locked in at that point. You could just as easily have sat there and said, I'm decommitting from USC to commit to Alabama. You're taking the visits. Again, travel is fun, especially at that age and everything else. After doing 3 cities and 4 games and 3 time zones in less than a month for the championship run for Ohio State, as fulfilling as it was, not only as a writer and a professional, but even as somebody who sometimes puts on a little bit of a fan hat. I mean, not going to lie, it's not like it doesn't exist. That was a lot of schlepping around. And this is even more schlepping around. But the second that his visit date or his commitment date came out, people were summarily writing it off to the point that I think that people were misreading it. I said, no, June 30th, not April 30th. He's still taking the visits. Slow down. But, I mean, this does feel largely like it's Alabama's to lose. And that's not to say that Alabama can't come out there and, hit a rope off the wall. The ball comes right to the center fielder and he throws you out at second. I mean, that kind of stuff happens plenty. So, you look at Ohio State and you look at Larry Johnson and whether, whatever your feelings are, if he still has his fastball or not, I mean, that's, I'm not going to convince you one way or the other. I mean, that's for you to come up with, but, shoot or shoot. And I think that it's going to be a good opportunity for Ohio State to sit there and, let him put the most recent national championship trophy in his arms and cradle it like a little baby and everything else. And, talk to me on Monday, talk to me on Tuesday, and let me see how I feel. But then again, I think it's going to be more important to talk to me in mid-June, a week or 2 out from his visit, certainly after the Bama hurdle, and kind of reassess. But I'm keeping an eye on that one, but it's probably not the one that is garnering the most attention from me from this weekend.
Yeah, and with that said, I mean, this recruitment's already taken one or two twists and turns. There's really nothing to say it can't. He couldn't commit to Alabama at the end of June and then show up at Ohio State in the fall for a game, or Texas in the fall for a game. Like, I think it's probably premature to write this one off, even after his June decision. I just think there's been enough twists and turns here. A bunch of offensive and defensive linemen, in addition to the guys we've talked about, are visiting this weekend. Go again, BuckeyeHuddle.com, read Jeremy Birmingham's weekend visitor preview, which is loaded with intel and information to get the latest on those guys. So, Kevin, we talked about the 3 5-stars, Hyder, Ojo, Griffin. Again, do they lead for any of these guys going into the weekend? I would personally say no, but which one of the three do you think they're most likely to maybe pull an upset or pull off? If you were told, look, they're gonna get one of these three guys, which one would you put your money on?
All right, let's work from the bottom. I don't think they're getting Xavier Griffin. I just don't. I know that there are people around Ohio State that are a little bit more optimistic, maybe people that are not normally as optimistic about things. So should I take pause there? Yes. Am I? No. So between Ojo and Hyder, it's funny because with Hyder, you have still a newish running back coach in Carlos Laughlin, who really kind of punches above his weight in a lot of ways. So I kind of want to say Hyder, but when you look at Hyder, it's Hyder's not being pulled in the direction by Ohio State and the in-state school. So while there's a proximity to, and he lives somewhere between Richmond and Charlottesville, to Knoxville versus Columbus, yes, there's a difference in distance. There's just something about Ojo. Ojo's got the feeling of the Urban Meyer special, landing the kid that you're probably not supposed to land or whatever. So I'm gonna say Ojo. I can't come up with a logical reason other than just kind of, I have a feeling that it's going to land on red 32. I'm gonna sit there and I'm gonna put, cash on the table. I'm gonna put $20 on a number, which is insane.
I'm going to go with Hyder. My own feeling would probably be Ojo, but there's been a quiet optimism, subtle optimism from people I've talked to at Ohio State about Hyder that I don't think is necessarily there with Ojo. I think with Ojo, it's more of a hope. I think they both, again, I think they're the top two right now for both of these guys. I feel like Hyder's going to have to look at Tennessee's depth chart. What will the NIL situations be between Tennessee versus the other schools he's considering? That could be something to factor in here. But there's something there. There's an optimism there from Ohio State that they're really much more in this one than people have given them credit for, including myself. And so I'm going to say if they pull off one of those three, I'm going to say it will be Hyder. So,
well, if we're both right, Ohio State fans.
Yeah, it's going to be
really
a great
happy.
Weekend.
And if we're both wrong, calm down because we all said they're all kind of
right. Look, we're not guaranteeing they're going to get one. We're just saying, we're not guaranteeing they're going to get one of these three. We're just saying if they were going to get one, which one do we think is the most likely? So that's how we're kind of putting it right now. But we'll be back here. We'll revisit this here soon, maybe right after the visits here. And then just lastly, Sincere Johnson, he's going to decide 3 days after his Ohio State official visit ends, June 19th. They've lost Jameer Perez to Florida, defensive tackle out of Glenville. Kevin, Sincere is down to Alabama, Ohio State, Penn State. He made his Penn State visit, says good things about Penn State. They've been in there for a while. He'll do the Alabama thing a week from now, and then he'll do Ohio State June 13th. Is there a crack here? Is there a disconnect at Glenville, or was Jameer Perez maybe a one-off?
I think Jameer Perez is more of a one-off. I can sit there and start talking about some dudes that were at Glenville before the pipe burst kind of and dried up and everything else. Mr. Walker, if you will, who was a strange cat in his own right and everything else. But, I think if Ohio State were more sold on Jameer Perez, that Jameer Perez would either be uncommitted or be committed to Ohio State at this point. Yes, he has an offer, and you have to be damn sure if you're going to offer kids in-state, especially at powerhouses like Glenville. You're not going to sit there and be like, "Sake, really didn't offer you, just was testing you." That's not necessarily the case there, but people so desperately want to find order in chaos, and recruiting is chaos. People want to be able to put everything into a bucket. Well, his teammate is going to XYZ school, so why isn't this happening? Well, guess what? We're not talking about Florida for Sincere Johnson. So this is not a case of, oh, everything is wrong. We're not talking about, oh, is he going to follow his teammate to Gainesville? That's not on the table at this moment for a multitude of reasons. So, if you really look at this from a logical standpoint, and I understand recruiting fans operate very much more in the emotional side of things, which is fine and why we love you, because passion is cool. I mean, passion is cool, and passion makes for great conversation and everything else. But I think at the end of the day, you need to make sure that you have yourself tethered to terra firma, to the earth. And reality says that Ohio State gets what it wants out of Glenville more often than not. And Sincere Johnson just has to look at the playbook that is called Arvell Reese. And while they're not, 100.0% the same dude, they're a lot more the same dude than I hate doing comps. Player comps, you do player comps in hell. I hate doing player comps. But this is a pretty good player comp. I like Ohio State to end up here. Honestly, I think Penn State is probably the school that makes the second most amount of sense. I'm not sold on what Alabama is right now at this point. And you sit there and you look at what what Penn State was able to get out of Abdul Carter, a player that both Marc and I banged the table for as much as we could when he came to Columbus looking for an offer and left without one. And neither of us could understand that one iota. But that coach is now in South Bend. And while I'm still very friendly with Al Washington, I will never forgive him for that one. In terms of, if you were ever going to listen to me, you should have listened to me about that and not about where to get wings in Columbus.
Yes, we will. We will always remember the Abdul Carter camp performance and wonder why that never happened. But to the thing with Sincere, he's so close with Arvell Reese. He's been a priority for a long time. Like, they have not taken that for granted. James Laurinaitis has been all over that recruitment. I would be beyond surprised if Sincere Johnson did not end up at Ohio State. I don't think there's a crack in the Glenville pipeline. I think they would have, Jameer Perez offered, yes. Would they have taken him? Yes. Do they have like a million defensive tackle irons in the fire right now? Also, yes. So I just think there was so much noise and wash there to get caught up in.
Is he 330? Is he 350? Whatever he is, there is a lot of rebuild there. Rebuilt Tyleek. Tyleek dealt with injuries his entire Ohio State career as well. So this isn't, you're looking at a one that isn't as much of a plug-and-play type of situation. Caden McDonald was a lot further along in his own personal development of being a big, fat one guy who they were able to turn around more than where I think Jameer Perez is at this point. Now, 3 years from now, somebody may go freezing cold takes on us. It's like, remember when you sat there and you were super critical of Jameer Perez? Well, one, no, I wasn't. But two, I get your point.
Yeah, I think they really want to let things play out with the defensive line, especially defensive tackle. Again, Larry Johnson's got a lot more irons in the fire this year than he normally has. And that's not me saying, oh, everything's going to work out exactly how everyone wants in 2 months. I don't know that it will. We'll see. But I just think from Ohio State's standpoint, they are wanting to let these official visits play out. They're bringing in so many guys the next 4 weeks. I think they wanted to let these things play out and kind of help them, like, okay, how do we separate? We've got 12 defensive tackles we're looking at. How do we separate? Look, like the PJ Deans of the world, they're priority guys. But like that next tier of guys is like, okay, how do we separate one from the other? Well, we spend 3 days around them and we find out which guys we like the most, and that's going to help this. So I just think they wanted more time to figure things out there. And now they're going to have it. And we'll see if they get back in on Jameer Perez or not. I don't know. But we'll see how this month goes. There's going to be a lot of second guessing if they don't get some of their top guys, for sure. And that'll be understandable if there is. But let's see how the next few weeks play out. But no, to answer our initial question, I don't think there's a crack in the Glenville pipeline. I think that will be reformed very nicely on June 19th, and still very much have Sincere Johnson joining the class. Kevin, parting thoughts.
My parting thought, I had several, but this is the one that I'm going to ride with to keep the show under half an hour, is this is anti-Jim Tressel recruiting model. And Jim Tressel would get up on National Signing Day, there was only one at that point, and be like, we just took a class of 23 and we had 27 official visits or whatever. This is not that. This ain't that. There's a much wider net in a lot of places, and that's fine. You got the money, it's all baked in, everything else. It's not like, oh, if you keep the money, you get to keep 10% off the top of it for whatever university doge may be, stick to sports or whatever. You're not getting anything for being efficient on there. So it's really interesting to see how this is going to be handled. Ohio State, in my opinion, has its deepest roster of recruiters from the top of the recruiting class of the coaching staff to the bottom of the coaching staff. I think that Ohio State's worst recruiter, and I'm not about to name names. I don't need to get a phone call, but I don't recognize this number, and it's a private number, and that's some coach yelling at me like, "You said I was the worst recruiter on the team." Coach, calm down. I was just trying to tell a story. I think that whoever would be deemed the worst one would probably have been like the number 2 recruiter on almost every Jim Tressel staff, only taking Jim off the list, but only behind like Luke.
As I say often, the more time passes, the more we learned that Jim Tressel was kind of doing it all, especially toward the end. Was kind of carrying a lot of the weight, but it's a new era. They're bringing in a lot of guys, even more so than usual. Just generally speaking, even for this era, they have really they're firing a lot of bullets on offensive line and defensive line, and so there's a lot of moving parts right now. There are some guys that maybe they're not going to get that are going to upset people, but then I think there's going to be some surprises too. When you bring in this many bodies at a position, there's going to be a surprise or two. There's going to be a kid you don't really think about being in this class who's falls in love on the visit and snap commits, and it's like, wow, we didn't think that was going to happen. So it's going to be a very exciting few weeks on BuckeyeHuddle.com. So make sure you're over there getting all the updates from myself, Jeremy Birmingham, and all our great team coverage from Kevin and Tony German and Tom Orr. Tom is, I think, going to be on vacation here for about a week or so. So
I heard it was maternity leave.
Yeah. So we'll be filling in for him on the morning show as well. So keep locked in on that. Just because Tom's out doesn't mean you can't watch the morning show. We're gonna have morning shows, so we'll keep those rolling for you guys as well. But look for lots of camp. Ohio State camp start next week. Next Thursday, I think, is the first one. We'll be at all those camps. We'll have updates, we'll have video, we'll have information, intel, everything else from those camps. So again, great time to sign up at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Just $12.99 for your first month, or you can go annual and save some money on your annual subscription. So appreciate everyone watching and listening. Again, check out Jeremy Birmingham's written update if you're more of a reader than a listener, go check out his written update on BuckeyeHuddle.com on the front page. But again, thank you for watching and listening. We will talk to you again very soon.